Politico released some fundraising numbers, and it shows how much money Republican representatives have gotten from the gun lobby. And I'm pretty sure that this may just be one election cycle. I don't know if this is their full fundraising amount for their careers or if it's just a small time frame that they got this from. But take a look here, and this shows you why we get no action, no legislation whatsoever on gun violence, despite horrendous mass shootings on a regular basis. So Paul Ryan got $171,977 from the gun lobby. I'm going to round this off just to make it easier. Ryan Zinke, $79,000. By the way, I think the ones that are highlighted in bold there are no longer in Congress, but the rest of them are. Martha McSally, $77,000. Todd Young, $74,000. Joe Heck, $69,000. Mia Love, $63,000. Kevin McCarthy, $42,000. Will Hurd, $36,000. Kevin Yoder, $34,000. Bruce Polikin, $32,000. Mike Kaufman, $31,000. Kevin Calvert, $30,000. Ed Royce, $29,000. Barbara Comstock, $28,000. Scott Tipton, $26,000. 25.5. So this explains it all. Clarissa explains it all. When you look at the polls, over 90% of the American people favor a universal background check on gun purchases. That's not really a political one. Democrats, independents, Republicans, even NRA members go, yeah, I see no problem whatsoever with a universal background check on gun purchases. Now, that may not have stopped the one that happened in Las Vegas. In fact, it almost certainly wouldn't have stopped it because the guy apparently had a totally clean record. But the point is, if you had a universal background check record, would you deter some of these mass shootings? And the answer is yes, without a doubt. So, in other words, you could look at these issues from a case-by-case perspective and speculate as to whether or not various new gun laws would have prevented this shooting or that shooting or whatever. But really, the best way to analyze this stuff is from a macro perspective. The best way to analyze this stuff is just look at the data overall. And if you were to have, some gun laws that are more reasonable than what we have now, yes, you would significantly cut down on the number of shootings and gun deaths that we have in the U.S. every year, and that number's 33,000, by the way. Depending on the year, sometimes it's over 33,000. That includes homicides, suicides, accidents, and everything, but also it's over 11,000 homicides every year. Gun deaths from homicides. So that's not a number any other modern nations have. And virtually across the board, every other modern nation has stronger gun control. Now, again, that's not me saying, hey, let's ban guns. I don't agree with banning guns. My take on guns is similar to my take on drugs, which is I think they should be legal, taxed, and regulated. But a lot hinges on that last word, regulated. You shouldn't be able to go buy a fucking chemical weapon or biological weapon or nuclear weapon or a Gatling gun or, armor-piercing bullets. You shouldn't be able to get any of that stuff. You should regulate it so that, yes, a law-abiding citizen can get a gun, but there's a process in place, and you can only get certain kinds of guns. You can only get a certain number of guns within a certain time frame. And, these are all things that if you're going to have legalized guns, you have to be reasonable about it. By the same token, if we have, legal drugs, I'm not in favor of you going to CVS and buying crystal meth there. We should have legal drugs, but it should be regulated in a way so that the worst forms of the drugs aren't even on the table, and you can get like a milder version of whatever your feeling you want is, whether it's an upper or downer or whatever, a psychedelic. And then this way it's regulated so it's safer even though it's legal. Same thing with guns. But we don't get any new regulations, even after Sandy Hook, where children were slaughtered, and even after the incident in Vegas, where 59 people were killed and over 500 were injured. These people were sitting ducks for over 10 minutes as a guy just lit into them. It was literally like shooting fish in a barrel. Lives destroyed in an instant. And we really don't get any serious conversation about changing gun laws because the NRA, the leadership of the NRA, again, I need to be clear about that because when you look at the polls of the people in the NRA, they're actually way more reasonable than the leadership. But the leadership of the NRA says, no, we're going to give you campaign contributions, and there is a quid pro quo going on here. We'll give you the campaign contributions if you basically promise to not be in favor of any new gun reform. None whatsoever. Because even mild gun reform would cut into the profits of the gun manufacturers, and the gun manufacturers donate to the leadership of the NRA, who gives the money to the politicians to do their bidding. So, you know, if you're shocked when you see all these mass shootings and you look at the polls and the American people are like, act! What are you waiting for? Act! Don't be shocked, because our voices effectively don't matter. That's why there was a political science study that came out from Princeton a few years back that found the U.S. functions more like an oligarchy than a democracy. It functions more like a kleptocracy than a democracy. The money controls the politicians. So again, you name the policy, I will explain to you how you've been snubbed. 80% of Americans want a living wage. Do we have a living wage? We don't, right? 61% want Medicare for all. Do we have Medicare for all? Only 17% still want to be in Afghanistan. We just got announcement number 9,312 that we're prolonging our war in Afghanistan even more. It's almost like you're being completely ignored, because you are. And we're at the point where mass shootings happen all the fucking time. And it's always the same headline. Worst mass shooting ever. Worst mass shooting ever. Because it keep getting worse. And Congress's response is incredibly sad. But this is exactly why. It's not because they say, hey, we have a philosophical disagreement and we're simply just in favor of more guns because we really believe more guns equals more peace. If they believe that, if they really believe more guns equals more peace, then they would be like, why don't we arm Iran more? Why don't we arm North Korea more? Why don't we arm all of our enemies more? They don't believe that. They say they want to disarm those people. So the hypocrisy is clear. The double standard is clear. With guns, it's not a principled philosophical disagreement. It's that they're paid to take that position. And now you know the numbers, and now you can see the motive behind it. They care less about American lives and more about getting that campaign check every time election season rolls around. So we need to keep up the pressure. We need to get money out of the system, and we need to fight for the right goals. Again, look, I understand there's a lot of people who listen to this show and who support Justice Democrats who don't have the same position as me on guns. But again, I think we can agree to some mild stuff. Universal background checks, ban on high-capacity magazines. I mean, these things, if you're against that stuff, that's a little ridiculous. Given the evidence of how well policies like that work, and given how you're not really curtailing freedom, but regulating something to make it more efficient.